My name is Khalid. I am from Qatar. So I've been asked to speak about my history, my background. So while I know this topic is, the theme is more about the modern revolution, I'd like for you to hear my story and see where some of these things that have impacted my life and draw parallels from that with what you're seeing today. Hopefully you'll see some similarities, just simply from the fact that I stem from here. So, you know, I've for those of you who don't know me, I've grown up here, and I lived, I'd say, half my life or half my career, most of my career and almost half my life in the United States. And over there, and in Europe and in Latin America, I give talks, and people at the time, you know, I left Qatar in the 80s. Not many people knew at that time where Qatar was. So then to them to see somebody like me, and there's only 300,000, roughly 300,000 people who are citizens of Qatar. So we're a very, very, just for any type of measure you would pick, with the exception of maybe our wealth per capita, we're just a tiny, tiny country in this big world. Yet, at the same time, throughout these years as I grow up, you see the impact that Qatar has had around the world. It had an outsized impact relative to its small size. And this is something that is possible because of the various technological revolutions that we've been seeing and other revolutions that we've been seeing throughout history. My childhood was very, very, very simple. I learned about a statistic recently. When I was in high school, when I was your age, there was exactly one university, and that was Qatar University. Today, there are 34. Just to show you how far Qatar has come since I was a kid your age. As a matter of fact, in the 80s, the biggest building in the West Bay was the Sheraton Hotel. Now, when you look at the Sheraton Hotel, it's like this tall compared to towers about that big. Around that time, when I was 10, my mother wakes me up in the middle of the night, and she says, wake up, come, say hi to the guests. So now when your parents invite you to come and greet their friends, their guests, how many of you are really excited about it? Can I see a show of hands? Okay, so there's a very small handful of you who are like, hey, I want to go see these people. The rest of you is like, oh man, and I was one of the rest of you. It's like, oh, I'm too tired. You know, I have school tomorrow. You know, since when was that an excuse? I'm sure if she said that I had a surprise or I have a brand new motorcycle for you downstairs, I would have jumped off the bed and went and checked it out. But just because it was, let's go say hello to a bunch of adults, boring, I'm not interested in that. She said, so I said to her that, I said, no, you don't understand. There's this guy, he's an astronaut. He went to the moon. He's downstairs. I want you to say hi to him. And I'm thinking to myself, I must be dreaming. There's no way. I mean, there was a show at the time called Cosmos. There's a reboot of that these days, but there's a show called Cosmos. It's a show about space. It's a show about astronomy, astrophysics. It's a show about human space flight or space exploration. And Carl Sagan was the one who hosted it at the time, a famous astronomer. And I followed that show. And I understood at that time that at the time, and even today, only 12 humans have walked on the surface of the moon. So then the chances of me ever meeting one of those, let alone meeting them in Qatar and in my home, is like 0 to nothing. I'm born April Fool's Day. So then I thought, this must be a trick. Must be. So grudgingly, I wore my clothes, woke up my sister, who was 8 at the time. We went downstairs, saw a whole lot of guests, and there he was. The guy was maybe just halfway up from this stage. He stood up and came walking towards me. And just like how, I don't know, each of you have your, let's say, your favorite role model or someone you'd be excited to meet one day, that was that guy for me. So imagine if that were to come true for you. Imagine that person who you want to meet is suddenly in front of you and walking towards you. That feeling, as he walked towards me. And I remember that day. I mean, just imagine, this is 1982. This is 42 years ago. I still remember it like it was 2 weeks ago. It's tattooed in my brain. Every step he took as he walked towards me, how he looked, everything like that. It was such an impact. He introduced himself, and he said, "I'm Alan Shepard." Alan Shepard, for those of you who don't know, was the first American to go to space. He was actually the first 7 to be selected for the entire astronaut program. He's the original Mercury 7. And he was the commander of Apollo 14, making him, earning him a spot of one of the few who walked on the moon. For those of you who have heard of Alan Shepard, you know his famous YouTube because he's also the astronaut that hit a golf ball, 2 golf balls on the moon. And he was instrumental in saving Apollo 13 because he was supposed to be on Apollo 13. He was supposed to be the commander for Apollo 13, but he had a problem with his ear and had to go and do some procedure to treat it. So then they couldn't take him. So then he skipped to Apollo 14. Had he been to Apollo 13, he wouldn't have actually walked on the moon. Just see how fate changes things. He wrote, there's this book called Light This Candle that's famous. I urge you to look at it if you want some inspiration from this guy. But he inspired me directly. So I sat with him, and I chatted with him for maybe about 45 minutes to an hour, something like that. My mother thought that I was bugging him because, you know, I was about my daughter Latifa's age. Latifa's 10. I was 10 at the time. And at that age, you ask a million questions. How is it like so-and-so? What do you do when you go to so-and-so? How about so-and-so? What about the rocket? Saturn V, does it go straight? You know, or does it go around? So he would explain to me all these things. And I appreciated lots of things. For example, that Earth's gravity is so powerful that even the most powerful machine we've ever built, which was a Saturn V rocket, could not escape it just by going straight out. It had to slingshot its way, orbit the Earth fast, and then slingshot. So he taught me all these things. But then he left me with some words of advice. He said to me, follow your dreams, follow your ambitions. I'm paraphrasing here. Some of the words don't come to me exactly what he said. I don't have a recording. And at the time, we didn't have mobile phones with cameras on them or anything like that. So this is all from memory. He said that when humans come together, they can achieve the impossible. We went to the moon. When we work together, we can achieve the impossible. Set your gaze high. Not even the sky is the limit. And from then on, whatever height my gaze was, went straight up like that. And from then on, space became the frontier I wanted to explore. And from then on, he became the role model I wanted to embody. But he was not the only one. And I've never been to the US at that time. We went to the US that following summer, a few months later. And by the way, he sent us a thank you letter. His wife was there. I didn't remember that his wife was there. I just remember he was there. You know, selective memory. So he talked about dancing and the great food and all that kind of stuff. I don't remember any of that. I just remember sitting with him talking about space. One of the first stops in the US was the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum, another place I highly advise you to go check out. And in there was a whole area dedicated to those original Mercury 7, and there was a full-size cutout of Alan Shepard there. It's like, oh, it's Alan Shepard. He's over there. We just met this guy. It was just so cool. But he was not the only role model that I had. Carl Sagan was another one. Carl Sagan was the astronomer who is famous. He's got a quotable that says billions and billions and billions. You may have heard that. He always says billions and billions because that's just how many stars are out there. And he also says we're made out of star stuff. For those of you who want to understand that sentence better, you can come to me because of limited time. I don't want to take up too much time of this talk to kind of delve into what these people have said. I'm happy to explain to you what they meant by that. But suffice it to say that the material that is in your body, the bone material, the iron that's coursing in your veins right now, comes from supernovae explosions from stars. And he was one of the first who made this beautiful sentence that kind of says that we are stars. We are superstars. So then, in addition to my parents, my father was Qatar's first electrical engineer, first Qatari to be an electrical engineer. He built the electricity infrastructure system that you see here today. We didn't have much electricity back when he started. And my mother was a nuclear physicist, or is a nuclear physicist. She studied nuclear physics in the 60s, and not many people did their graduate studies in nuclear physics back then. They met, fell in love, and then I came, and then my siblings came, and the rest is history. So I stood literally on the shoulders of giants, and that's what we do in human history. We stand on these shoulders as we march up and up and up, and we advance our knowledge. And you find your role models, and you find these people, these giants, and then you pick up where they left off, and you contribute your bit, and then we just keep building this mountain as we go. Years go by. I finish high school. I go to the United States. I study mechanical, aerospace, and electrical engineering. So that's like 11 years. Yeah, I know for those of you who are finishing high school, it's like, oh man, this guy's talking about 11 years, Carl. We just finished 11 years of school. There's another 11 years to go. Yes, yes. And I'll assure you, if you go to the right schools and have the right advisors, you can enjoy it so much. I've had colleagues who didn't want to leave. They didn't want to graduate. It was that good. So I came back, like most Qataris do, and I taught at Qatar University for a few months. And then Her Highness Sheikh Hamoza pulled me out for this project that was about Qatar Foundation. So Qatar Foundation was about 5 years old at the time. This was the year 2000. And Education City was one of its star projects. It was just dirt and plans. And it was nothing more than just something on a sheet of paper with Qatar Academy was there. You can see that's one of the plans there, one of the old plans actually. Qatar Academy was there, VCU was there, and that's about it. And I joined them. And I had this marvelous opportunity to contribute to advancing Qatar's aims when it comes to education and research. And you don't get chances like this that often. So I took it. So I became advisor to Her Highness, to the board. I was in charge of bringing Carnegie Mellon to Qatar. I was in charge of bringing Texas A&M to Qatar, and unfortunately, sad to see them go after 20 years. Makes me feel a little older. Then, in the middle of all of this, we traveled to the United States to look for partners. Let's partner on supercomputing. Let's partner with this and this and that. And one of the stops was to meet with NASA folks inside their Silicon Valley center. For those of you who don't know, NASA has 10 centers around the United States, each specializing in some area. And Ames, the one in Silicon Valley, was the Advanced Research Center. And I got offered a job to go work there. This was like a dream come true to me. It was like fantastic. Here we come. Here's Alan Shepard. You know, I was offered to be an astronaut when I was in college by NASA, but because of my Qatari citizenship, and we are not participants in the space program, they couldn't hire me at the time. So this was my opportunity to be part of this great organization and do some amazing, cool stuff. I mean, 10 years of doing NASA work, and I'm still the only Qatari to have ever worked there, those 10 years were some of the most memorable years of my life. I mean, we did everything. I mean, just look at this. This is like, we built spacecraft for the moon. We've worked on the Mars program. We flew drones. We had drones powered by AI back in 2003. Not now, 2003. We even solved a murder crime. We went to the Atacama Desert in Chile. Rode our rovers there. Controlled them through satellites. You name it, we did it. I even sat on a board of a company that's actually going to be sending their robot to the moon at the end of this year. So Astrobotic is a company that is one of the few commercial companies that work with NASA to help them achieve their Moon and Mars objectives, just like SpaceX. You can look all this up because this is a very short, this is a 1-hour talk that I condensed to basically 15, 18 minutes. And these are just little highlights for you to kind of dig into if you want. But you can find this on TV. They had a whole episode about this. You can find it in the news. It's really cool. You get called and say, hey, we need your help solve a murder crime. It's like, what? I said, no way. What did I do wrong? And then they go, no, you did nothing wrong. And I said, well, my technology can't find bones. Like, we're not looking for bones. We're looking for metallic objects. I go, okay. It's a total CSI moment for me. You know, there's this tendency to feel like, to say something like, oh, if you get a chance to work at Google, you say, I work for Google. I work for Microsoft. I work for Boeing. I work for Qatar Foundation. I work for Qatar Energy. The word for is a little bothersome for me because it kind of connotates that you are serving the interests of some structure called Google or some structure called Qatar Foundation, that you are subservient to that structure. But I'd like to remind you the reason NASA is successful at what it does. What I found is that the scientists and engineers at NASA don't look at the center directors as people who they report to. They look at these center directors and these executive directors, which I became one of them, as people who support them. It's the other way around. It is structures supporting the people. So Google would not exist without its people. Qatar Foundation would not exist without its people, instead of people serving structures. So if there's a take-home for you, is to always remember that. Don't let it be where ultimately whatever it is that you do becomes a structure so stagnant that all you do is just slot into it and then you work for it. It actually supposed to wrap around you and adapt to you. That's what I would leave you with. And this is cliche. You've seen this before a million times. But it is true. It is one of the truest sentences you'll ever hear. The future is always coming. It's always here. Until the end of days. The future will always happen, whatever that future holds. And you are a part of that. I hand the baton to you to carry this earth to wherever it needs to go and its people. So then it rests on you. I've done 20-some years of this, so there's now about 30-some years between me and you. In those 30 years, you're going to actually carry and do some things in those 30 years. And then you're going to stand here like me with some gray hair and then talk to the next generation and say, hey, it's now your turn. So as Carl Sagan said, we're made of stars. And because of that, and gold actually comes from those stars, it's up to you to usher in the next golden age. Thank you.